Suminagashi is the ancient form of water marbling from Japan that creates these mesmerizing patterns using ink, water and a little bit of soap. That's it. I did a step-by-step video about the basics of Suminagashi, and there are a few questions after it, so I want to answer some of those here. Think of this as a part 2, slightly more advanced. In the first part, and if you haven't seen that, there'll be a link, we manipulated the ink, but I forgot to mention that you can use alcohol to make really interesting, well, amazing patterns. Therefore, I am delighted to find a use for this 20-year-old bottle of raki that's been lurking at the back of the cupboard, bought on holiday and never drunk. Another question was, well, can you add colour to your work? Well, yes, you can. You've got to find the right ink, and we'll cover that here. The alternative to adding coloured ink is, of course, using coloured papers, and I'll show you a few different papers rather than just the rice paper that I used in the first demonstration. The final idea I want to share with you is using different size containers or different shaped containers. I did this one in a bowl to get a round print, and I'll show you how I did that. My name's Liz Chaderton. I'm a watercolour artist based in Berkshire. Every week I share tips and tricks I wish I'd known about ages ago. This week it's a part 2 of Suminagashi, just taking some of the techniques forward so that you can manipulate your designs and get even more beautiful effects. Suminagashi needs the barest amount of materials, you will be glad to know. You need a container to put your water in, and you need water. Only about 2 centimetres or an inch of water. Then you need your ink, and it is Sumi ink. It's either going to be Chinese or Japanese, and Sumi ink is just soot, carbon, with a binder, and we put about a tablespoon of that into a pot and add the magic ingredient, which is dish soap, 1 drop to a tablespoon. This has already got it in. We then need the other magic ingredient, which is soapy water. Again, it's about a tablespoon clean water and 1 drop of dish soap. Don't add too much, because too much is as bad as too little, and that just needs to be dissolved into the water. We will need a couple of brushes. Traditionally you would use a Chinese brush, but an ordinary Western brush, absolutely fine. Water, ink, soap, we need paper, and the paper must be absorbent. If you use a non-absorbent paper, it gives you a far lighter print. So this is rice paper, and it is raw rice paper. You can just use photocopier paper, but make sure it's uncoated. We just kiss the surface and we get that lovely little spread of ink. And then this is, the soapy water is almost like a white ink. It gives you clear space. If you hold it on longer, more goes onto the surface. You'll get a bigger spread. If you just touch the surface, you get a smaller amount. And we don't want too much ink on the surface, because that can run when we print. And we can make, I was going to say whatever pattern we like, but actually the pattern and the joy of this can never be repeated. And the pattern is influenced by me speaking, by the breeze in the room, by the vibrations of the earth. It is a conversation between the water, the ink and the environment, and that is rather lovely. I've done a step-by-step tutorial that showed you the basics and how we might manipulate it by waving air over the top. Look, just wafting my hands. This tutorial is in answer to some of the questions I got from that one and a few more techniques that I forgot to put in there. So before, I talked about we could blow this very gently with our breath. We could wave like I was doing there. Just use your hand or use a fan or a piece of paper. We can spatter into this with either our soapy water to get white spaces or with our ink to get black. One thing I totally forgot to show you was alcohol. So rubbing alcohol is better because it's stronger. Couldn't find any rubbing alcohol. In the back of our drinks cabinet was this raki that we must have got on holiday about 20 years ago. So I'm going to put some in a little container. And now if we touch the surface with the alcohol, look, we get these little sort of, I don't know, swirls. It reacts with the water and we get these wonderful swirls. Oh, look at that one go. Isn't that fun? So that's, and it actually smells quite nice. It's aniseed if you don't know raki. So you can get these wonderful, wonderful squirly whirly marks, which are totally different to the marks that you get from just wafting with the air or dropping in the soapy water. When you are happy with the pattern you've achieved, of course we need to print. Oh, that's really pretty. So I spent a lot of time in these tutorials going, oh, because it's just so gorgeous. And just before I print it, I need to show you my dress. I found this dress in a local charity shop a couple of days ago, and it's like a Suminagashi dress. We grab our paper and we hold it in a U shape. Make sure you've got stuff pre-cut that's going to fit in your container. We put it down very gently till it touches the water and then let it spread out naturally. So if you do that too fast, you can get little eddies of air as it settles down. If your paper's a bit thicker, you'll get that. And that can lead to little marks in the ink. If you do it too slow, you get stripes where it doesn't print properly, and I call those hesitation marks. But let's have a look what we've got here. We pull it off gently. Let me put it on a piece of white paper just so you can see. Wow, look at that. Those swirls and eddies. Now, if you've used lots of ink and it's running, you could rinse this in water. Do go careful because this paper, when it's wet, is really, really fragile. I just place that on newspaper to dry, and it dries really quickly because it's so thin. Now we need to clean our surface, and we clean our surface simply by dragging or floating a piece of newsprint on the water, and that absorbs any excess ink. There is ink in there, but it's below the surface, so it doesn't matter at all. If you've left your water for a while, it's worth skimming it because any little bits of dust on the top can make the surface tension a bit greater or interfere in some way, and that stops the ink spreading out. This is just plain water, straight out of the tap. I live in the Thames Valley and we have very hard water here. It works for me. If you find that your ink is sinking, you've added extra washing up liquid and whatever, still sinking, it could be your water is just too hard. Try using distilled water or softened water in some way. One question I did get asked was, oh, can you thicken the water in some way? I've seen that people add corn flour and cook it and make your water thicker. Of course you can do that, but that is not Suminagashi. Suminagashi is ink floating on water, full stop. Turkish marbling or Ebru marbling, which is the sort of thing that you see inside book covers, is done on thickened water, and they thicken that water with seaweed. The next question I got asked about was colour. You know, all this black and white stuff is fine, people said, but what if I want colour? Well, of course, we've got two choices here. We can use a coloured paper or we can use coloured inks. So let's just do something with some coloured paper. What would happen if we do it like that? And look, I have got some coloured paper. It's actually got little fibres in. I don't know what you would call it, but it is very absorbent. Look, I put a little drop of water on it, spread, it didn't sit on the surface. Should I do it that way or that way? No, I think we'll go that way. So I always like to hold it in that U shape, put it down, and then let it print. Oh wow, look at that. You can try different sorts of papers. That is gorgeous. The second alternative to colour is of course coloured ink, and red Sumi ink is available. Harder to find, but available. Comes in a bottle just like the black, but when we pour it out, I hope you can see that it's a lot thicker and sort of gluier than the black ink. And the red colour, again, traditionally comes from a substance called cinnabar, and cinnabar is a mercury salt. Often the red also has a binder that is made out of animal products, so if you're vegetarian or vegan, you'll need to do a little bit more research. The black ink tends to be a plant binder, so you should be fine with the black ink. Now, I have never had a huge amount of success with the red, I have to be honest. It looks incredibly vibrant, very orangey red in the pot, but on the surface it's just doesn't behave in the same way. So I'm going to put my drop of ink in there. I've just got an ordinary brush because I've run out of oriental brushes, and I hope you're catching how gluey it is. I'm not overly hopeful for this. Let's give it a go. Maybe you will be my lucky people, because what I'd really like to do is a black and red version. So I hope you can see that that zoomed out, but I cannot see any red there, or very little. So let's just keep going and have faith that maybe something is going on here, and that as these circles go out, maybe they will become more visible. But it isn't sinking, so that's good. I'm just building up that pattern. And you can see, well, I obviously haven't skimmed it terribly well because I've got black to the side. So let's put in a tiny bit of black. So there's our black. What happens if I put red in the middle? Pushes it out for sure. Another tiny bit of black there. Let it push out. And the thing is, this is such a fast process. We can experiment, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll find a way around it. Let's just give that a little wave, see what happens. And now let's print it and see how that pink shows up, or red, I should say, shows up. This is our pattern, and you can definitely see the pink colour, but it's not vibrant, and it's amazing that that comes from that, isn't it? If you are a Suminagashi expert, please tell me what you do to get a stronger red in your work, because I would love to know. Red and black and white is such a great combination. Now, having struggled with that Sumi ink, I looked at this and found this from Boku Undo just on Amazon. I believe it's available pretty much worldwide. So you might be tempted to give one of these kits a go. I'll do a whole video about using this kit, but let me show you their red, and we can just do a comparison. These should not need any dish soap in them. They are ready to use. Right, I hope you saw that. Let's see how these print. It's immediately looking redder on the surface. Let's introduce a little bit of black. So this red ink on the surface certainly looks better than the traditional Sumi ink. I wonder if I just drag with my brush end and see what happens there. So I've got my pre-cut paper, slightly larger, so I can pick that up. We come down just nice and gently. Oh, that's quite nice, isn't it? So you can see it. That is with the Boku Undo ink from the marbling kit. Let's compare that. It's a far brighter colour. Still not red, is it? But certainly brighter than the traditional Sumi ink. So if you want to start using other colours, it might be worth trying to get hold of some of that. This is a round one that I've done before, which I thought was quite successful. So let's have a go at that. The ink does seem to collect at the edge of the bowl, so you do get this feathering off to the side, and I cannot think of a way round that at this point. But again, if you have done this and you think, all you need to do is whatever, please do tell me. Just fill it to it before it brims over. So again, doing this slightly different in that I'm starting at the edge. We're just playing with the patterns. Now, quite often you do this for longer than I am, so I'm keeping these short and simple, just so that you don't get bored. But you could go on doing these patterns until they're very dense. So I need to move those out of the way. I quite like that, and I don't think I'm going to manipulate it any more than that, just because I want to see what it looks like. Centralize that. And then take that off. Say what I'm trying to avoid is it running into the surrounding area as much as possible. Let's wrap up. I did the briefest of introduction to this as a process, and I've got the full step-by-step if you want more detailed. We saw how we manipulate the inks, and this was with the alcohol, and I am so glad to have found a use for that age-old bottle of raki. I love these swirls. We also use different papers to add a little colour into our Suminagashi, and I really like this design. It's very bold, it hasn't got the subtlety, but on this sort of rough paper, the very fine lines that say we've got here just won't show up. So I think bold is the way to go. We saw that sadly, the red Sumi ink really doesn't work terribly well. Yes, it shows, but doesn't show detail or strong contrast. So if we want to use coloured inks, my suggestion was to get something like this little Boku Undo kit and use the colours from there. I wish you could get these inks separately, but I haven't found anywhere where we can in the UK. We are off to Japan in a couple of weeks' time, so I'm really hoping I might be able to pick up some inks there. But I do love particularly the black and red together. I think it's so striking. There's another black and red one, and that illustrates the final thing that we did today, is consider the shape of your vat. By using a round or a square or something that constrains your ink, you can start to create some really interesting prints. Suminagashi, yes, is a random, uncontrollable process, but you can direct it. You can gently herd it, like herding cats, to achieve the sorts of images and patterns that you want. The next question, of course, is what on earth are you going to do with these 3 million papers that you've produced? Because it is so addictive. And if you like, I will be making a video about that very shortly. Look out for it.